Picture this. A man walks in a hotel in a small Irish town. He doesn't seem rushed or scared. He checks in under a name that isn't real. He pays in cash, speaks politely, and then, over the next few days, he walks the streets, quietly throwing away every trace of who he is. And then he dies. And 15 years later, we still don't know his real name. We don't know where he came from, and we definitely don't know why he chose to erase himself. Welcome back to Crimes Across Borders. I'm Cora, and today we are diving into one of Ireland's strangest modern mysteries, the case of the man who called himself Peter Bergmann. And honestly, I think this one is less like a crime scene and more like a ghost story that's somehow real. If you've never heard of this case before, buckle in, because the deeper you go, the more questions pile up. It was just after sunrise on June 16, 2009, when Arthur Kinsella and his teenage son Brian arrived at Rose's Point Beach in Sligo. They weren't there for a walk. Brian was training for a triathlon, cutting through the morning chill with energy in his stride. A low sea fog just drifted across the sand, thinning as the sun began to break through. Brian ran ahead, feet kicking up sand, and dove into the cold Atlantic water to start his swim. His father lingered behind, scanning the shoreline, breathing in the salt air. And that's when he saw it. Not far from the water's edge, a shape. Pale, motionless, not driftwood, not seaweed. It was a body. Arthur called out to his son, but even from a distance it was obvious. Whoever this man was, he most likely wasn't alive. They walked around him slowly, respectfully. Arthur reached out and touched the man's ankle, ice cold. There were no other footprints around the body except their own, no sign of struggle. It looked like the tide had brought him in. Arthur bowed his head, said a quiet prayer, and then they called the Gardaí. So who was this man? He checked into the Sligo City Hotel on June 12, 2009, under the name Peter Bergmann, spelled with two N's. He told the receptionist he was from Austria or Germany. It's not clear. Some people say it was just based on his accent. He gave an address in Vienna that turned out to be completely fake. He was around 50, maybe 60 years old, tall, thin, graying hair, and always very neatly dressed. Polite, soft-spoken, someone who didn't draw too much attention. And here's the part that honestly kind of creeped me out a little bit at first. Every day he left the hotel carrying a purple plastic bag. And every time he came back, there was no bag. I'm not sure if he had multiple purple bags like this or he hid the empty one under his coat, but he was always coming back without it. It didn't seem like it was trash runs police checked. It was like he was strategically getting rid of his past piece by piece. As far as investigators could tell, he made sure nothing was ever found, they assuming it was his possessions. And even now, with all the surveillance, databases, and facial recognition tech we have, he still hasn't been identified. So let's go through the last few days of his life. June 12, 2009, a man calling himself Peter Bergmann arrives in Sligo by bus coming from Derry, Northern Ireland. The bus is busy and the driver doesn't remember him. He takes a taxi to the Sligo City Hotel and he doesn't have a reservation, just walked in and asked for a room. He checks in as a solo guest, pays cash, and gives a fake Austrian address. He receives the keys to room 705. And that's when things get slightly odd. Over the next 3 days, he leaves his hotel 13 different times, always with a purple plastic bag in hand. And every time he comes back to the hotel, he's no longer carrying it. And police doesn't think it was just trash. They checked all the usual places. He wasn't throwing things into public bins or street dumpsters or anywhere CCTV cameras could see. He was intentionally slipping out of view, disposing of something carefully, quietly, and whatever was in those bags, to this day, it's completely gone. Every morning during his stay, like clockwork, Peter Bergmann came down to the hotel breakfast room at around 8:30 a.m. He didn't chat, he didn't make friends. He just nodded politely to the reception staff, grabbed his meal and ate alone. No phone, no conversation, just him and his quiet routine. Saturday was one of the busiest days in his timeline. he walked to Sligo's main post office and bought airmail stamps and envelopes. 8, maybe 10, it depends on the reporting. It looked like he was preparing to send something overseas. And if it wasn't mysterious enough, the CCTV backup from the post office glitched. So while we see him buying the stamps, we don't see whether he ever actually mailed anything. And that same day, something else happened that was a little bit unsettling. One of the hotel's cleaning staff couldn't get into his room, so she asked the manager for help. And the manager opened the door, and there he was, standing absolutely still in the middle of the room. No sound, no explanation, just standing there, frozen for a second, like he's been caught off guard, almost scared. And when he realized it was just hotel staff, he visibly relaxed almost instantly. Now, sure, anyone might act a little strange if someone suddenly barged into their room, but this wasn't a startled guest moment, according to the manager. She said his reaction was so intense, like he had been caught doing something he shouldn't, that it was strong enough that it stuck with her, just felt off. The next day, Sunday, June 14th, something stood out in his usual routine. Around 11 a.m., Peter approached the taxi outside the hotel and asked the driver for a nice, quiet beach because he wanted to go for a swim. The driver, who later spoke to the police, recommended Rose's Point, one of the calmest beaches in Sligo. From what I gather, once they got there, Peter didn't actually swim. I found different sources saying he got out, walked around for about 15 minutes. Some say a little longer, but most confirms that he didn't swim. It was almost like he was just scouting the area, and then he calmly got back into the taxi. He had no towel with him, no bag, no change of clothes. It was just like he wanted to have a look. On Monday, Peter Bergmann's last full day alive, he goes down to the hotel reception and asks for a late checkout. He didn't give a reason, just that he has to run some errands. And we see him leave once again with that same mysterious purple plastic bag. And just after 1 p.m., he checks out of the hotel for good. When he walks out the front door, he's carrying 3 bags: a black laptop-style shoulder bag, a small black carry bag, and the ever-present purple plastic bag. But by the time he gets to the Sligo bus station, that number drops to 2. He's now only holding the laptop bag and the purple bag, which means, like so many other times before, he has dropped something off, thrown something away, hidden something we will never find. At the bus station cafe, Peter orders cappuccino and a sandwich. Just a calm, quiet lunch. Aman alone on a Monday afternoon. At one point, he takes out a piece of paper and looks at it multiple times, kind of plays with it, and eventually tears it all up. The CCTV catches this, but because the footage wasn't reviewed until days later, police couldn't locate the torn paper scraps. Whatever was on it, it was lost. Around mid-afternoon, he buys one-way bus ticket to Rose's Point. The driver remembers it clearly. He asks single or return, and Peter replied single. It's almost like he knew he wasn't planning on coming back. Once he arrives at the beach, multiple witnesses remember seeing him. He stood out a bit, too well dressed for the coast. He was pacing quite fast. He carried a newspaper under his arm and walked with purpose, almost briskly. One woman later said they even joked to each other that he's still there because they saw him twice that afternoon. It seems like he just walked back and forth.
He looked almost out of place and out of time. The beach was very narrow at the time, and he seemed to be pacing it, didn't he?
Yeah.
We didn't say anything at that time, but he certainly took both of our attentions, I suppose.
And 30 minutes later, we were on our return. And I said to Fiona, that guy is still on the beach. It looks strange.
Others noticed him again around sunset. This time his trousers are rolled up, feet in the water, his silhouette glowing gold against the dying light. And then much later, at around 11 p.m., there's another sighting. A couple walking near the water's edge says hello. He just nods back and keeps walking. And by all accounts, he isn't carrying any bags anymore, just that newspaper. Everything else, the laptop bag, the plastic bag, whatever was inside was gone. And that was the last time anyone ever saw Peter Bergmann alive. The next morning, June 16th, we are back where this story began, Roses Point Beach. Arthur and Brian Kinsella spot the body just as the tide is going out. They call the Gardaí, and soon the area is cordoned off. Police, ambulance, and later the coroner. And there he is, the man who called himself Peter Bergmann, lying on the beach with no bags, no shoes, no wallet, no ID. When Gardaí continued their search of the shoreline, they reportedly found some of Peter's clothes folded neatly on a nearby rock. Inside the pockets were a few everyday items. There was a small amount of cash, some tissues and plasters, a couple of aspirin, and what some sources claim was a bar of hotel soap, typically not used in Irish hotels. There are even mentions of a watch being recovered with the clothing as well, although that detail hasn't been confirmed in any official reports that I could find, so it might just be one of those things that are repeated on Reddit multiple times and that's it. And like so much of this case, the belongings only deepen the mystery. Everyday items, but nothing that reveals a name, a past, a life. When they found him, he wasn't wearing swim shorts like you would expect for a dip in the ocean. He had on purple striped Speedo style swimming trunks, but his underwear was worn over them. And he also had a navy t-shirt tucked in. And every clothing label that could have helped identify where the items came from was cut off. And I mean, most of my clothes have labels cut off because they just sometimes like irritate you somewhere. But in this context, it is a little bit strange. There was also no signs of obvious injury, no blood, no evidence of any struggle. And at first glance, it looked like a case of drowning. But the autopsy would say something very different. The body was taken in for a full autopsy, and this is where things got confusing. First, the cause of death, it wasn't drowning. There was no salt water in his lungs. He died from acute cardiac arrest, a heart failure event. But the strange part wasn't even this. There were significant signs that he had been seriously ill. The coroner found signs of advanced prostate cancer and potentially even bone tumors. He should have been in a lot of pain, but there were no signs of any medication in his system. Someone dealing with that kind of advanced illness would almost certainly be on heavy medication, painkillers at the very least, and yet there was no traces in his blood. Not even something over the counter like a paracetamol. It's like he stopped taking everything well before he died. And that's not all. The toxicology report showed no drugs, no poison, no alcohol in his system. If he used anything at all, I think the only evidence comes from CCTV footage where he's been smoking, but nothing else. There were no surgical scars, no tattoos, nothing obvious to help identify him. Even his teeth, which showed a fair amount of dental work, including bridges, root canals, crowns, and a full gold tooth on the upper back right side, didn't match any dental database. So none of that helped. Nothing could connect him to a name, a hospital, or even a country. The Gardaí tried comparing his DNA and fingerprints to countless national and I think international databases as well, but every single time there was no match. Everything about him was blank. After the autopsy, the biggest mystery remained exactly what it was from day one. Who was this man? The Sligo Gardaí launched a full investigation. They pulled 64 hours of CCTV from around town and traced almost every step he took. They interviewed receptionists, bus drivers, post office workers, even people on the beach who remembered seeing him. They tracked receipts, checked travel roads, spoke to Interpol, shared his campsite sketch internationally, but there was nothing. The man calling himself Peter Bergmann had left no trail behind him. No passport, no wallet, no bank card, no bags found anywhere, no phone. All the possible personal items we watched him throw away over 3 days. If he even arrived with any of those things, he probably got rid of them in those purple bags. And they just simply never turned up. The police mentioned that the CCTV cameras are clearly visible around the city, and it seems like he had no problem with his face appearing on them, yet he made all that effort to dispose of his belongings in a way they cannot be traced. And he could have just dumped it all at once, still in multiple places, but on one run, he chose to do it bit by bit in this quite suspicious way, every day just leaving for a little walk and then coming back without the bag. So it is a little bit strange, and it adds to this mystery around him. So there are a few main theories. So the first one is suicide by sea. Given the autopsy results showing advanced cancer and the complete lack of any medication in his system, many people believe Peter came to Sligo to die on his own terms, quietly, without a name, without leaving a trace. And honestly, it does make kind of sense. He bought a single ticket, disposed of everything that could connect him to a past, walked the beach at sunset alone, just saying goodbye. And a lot of terminally ill people want to take control over how and when they leave this world. But here's where it gets a little bit complicated. Peter didn't drown. He died of a heart attack. And however calm and methodical he might have been, that's not something you can plan with precision. There were no drugs in his system that could have brought it on, no overdose, no sedatives, nothing to help him time his death. So unless he somehow expected that his heart would fail right there on the beach, maybe by submerging himself in the cold water, or he just simply thought otherwise he will drown, then even this theory leaves us with questions. If he wanted to die peacefully, why make it so uncertain? And why go through all that fake name and disposing of the belongings in such a secretive way? Another idea people go back to is the level of planning involved here. The labels removed from every piece of clothing. No passport, no wallet, no bank card. Days spent systematically dumping his belongings all over town. Moving with purpose, but avoiding every camera angle that might give away too much. It all points to someone who knew how to disappear. So maybe he was ex-intelligence, someone who spent years staying off the grid. Maybe he was a part of organized crime, someone who didn't just want to die, but wanted to make sure that no one could ever trace him back to whatever he left behind. So people think he fully expected the sea to take him, that his body would just drift out and never wash up. And surely that idea fits his behavior better than anything else so far, but yet again, the heart attack complicates the story. If he planned his death to be clean disappearance, no trace, no body, no name, then a heart stopping against the tide wasn't exactly a guaranteed outcome. So it might explain the bizarre prep work downtown, but it doesn't fully answer what happened on the beach. And then there's a softer but just as haunting theory. Maybe Peter wasn't running from a dark past. Maybe he was trying to protect somebody in his present. Some believe he may have had a family somewhere, alive, a history, but he didn't want to burden them with his illness or the cost or trauma of watching him die. And there's even speculation that if he remained legally missing for a while and was eventually declared dead, an insurance payout could support those he left behind. In some places, that setup can't work if the death is ruled out as suicide, or if the identity is known and it's tied back to like a terminal illness. So maybe, just maybe, that's why no one even came forward. It's still strange that no one else ever recognized him, even some work colleague or neighbor. We are not talking about someone who vanished in the 1950s. This was 2009. The police think he was well off due to his dental work and the way he was dressed. So he most likely had some type of job, seen people, doctors, went to the shops. He was walking around in public spaces. We have tons of CCTV footage, but yet no one came forward. If he did have a life somewhere, it seems strange that no one ever recognized him. So this theory too explains something, just not everything. So here we are, more than 15 years later, and the man who called himself Peter Bergmann is still a mystery. A man with no past, no traceable identity, no one searching for him, and nothing left behind to explain why. We know he was sick, we know he planned parts of this, we know he made sure nobody would ever find out who he really was. Was he a father, a husband, a neighbor with a quiet smile and a secret pain, or someone who spent his life in shadows, someone we were never meant to know? For now, all we have is his last walk on a Sligo beach and the questions he left behind. So what do you think? Was Peter running from something or simply choosing how his life would end? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I would love to hear what theory makes the most sense to you. And if you want to dive deeper into more cases like this, strange, unsolved, make sure to subscribe and join me here every week for more crimes across borders.